Klopp might not be the only departure this summer for Liverpool Football Club because obviously you've got a new manager, but that's meaning that there's going to have to be a new vision at the club, quite possibly as well. And if that happens, then some players might need to move away as well. And of course, we've got FFP and everything else going on. Money needs to be made, Nubaid. Now, we've got the contracts of the whole squad here, and there's a couple of areas that I always like to kind of work within the sort of 2-year perimeter, I guess. Once you're getting into 2 years left, that's your time to sort of sell these players and make that decision or get them to sign again. We've all played Football Manager. That's how it works. So with the possible rebuild for Liverpool, there's some sort of key areas that we kind of want to look at. First of all, in terms of that new manager that comes in, obviously loads of talk about Alonso, but he's also checked to Bayern Munich supposedly as well. How do you feel about the successor and the amount of change that you'd like to see at Liverpool?
I think Liverpool as a club are in a situation where it speaks to this season. Whoever you bring into the side, it works. You bring in kids and it still works because the culture is so perfectly put in place. I think if someone comes in and says, I want to change everything, it's probably the opposite thing you want to do. We don't want a Ten Hag situation at United where he comes in and he says, all the coaches are going and this is my club now. I think you want someone who comes in and goes, this is the philosophy we've used. These are the sort of profiles that we go after. We may tinker that a little bit. For example, Xabi Alonso might switch to a 3-4-3 or something like that. But a lot of the players, their skill sets are still transferable. My issue would be in the current situation that the few players that are out of contract change the dynamic of the whole team. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And that's the worry.
And just another one, in terms of the kids playing, as well as they have in big games like they have, that's one that, is it one where sell them now whilst the stock's high? Or do you believe in this group? Do you think that this group could be the sort of the next layer of Liverpool's journey?
I think I've always found that with Liverpool Football Club, I don't know why I've said the full name there, but we have.
I did it as well.
Yeah, it's a weird one. When you start to talk about the serious topics, the contracts, we go full all the way. I think the thing about this side is typically, if you look across the board, apart from some of the players we're going to talk about, generally speaking, the teams at a pretty healthy age, and to break into the side, say Dan's or Elliot has broken into the side, or Ben Doak, they need to be at a certain level. And I think that requires go out on loan, like Conor Bradley, and ultimately I don't think the plan was for him to stay. We just became desperate, and now we're going, he's the backup to Trent. I still think long term, he's a great example of what probably will happen. He's probably not the successor. Because to fill Trent's boots, you need someone who's at that sort of level.
Because I think there's an interesting discussion about FFP and the strategy for different teams. Now, with Klopp and Liverpool, what they did so well was if you want the best players and they come in and they're amazing straight away, that costs money, and generally those players you don't sell on for a load of money, and that's why Man United are in a difficult position. That's why Man City will end up selling some of those players as well. So for Liverpool and what Klopp did with Robertson and bringing in, Mane was, I don't know if Mane was before or not, but the group as a collective they did it really cleverly with not too much spent. So in terms of those big players that might move on, getting the balance right, because if you want to go and buy new players, those new players, especially probably a bit of a Premier League tax these days, for the top teams to go and win trophies, they're going to cost a lot of money. But as you say, the average age of the group is good. In terms of some of the older guys that might move on, this kind of speaks to that point. You've got Salah, Virgil van Dijk. Obviously, Trent's not old, but he's coming to a point with his contract. 2025 for Salah's contract. Virgil van Dijk's contract is up in 2025 as well. Trent Alexander-Arnold, 2025 as well. Joel Matip, his contract's set to expire. Adrian, which I know Nubaid would be heartbroken about. It's
devastated.
Gonna have to say goodbye. I'm looking forward to the whole ceremony of that one alongside Klopp leaving, and Thiago as well, all set to expire. But that's a lot of the older guys in the team. So in terms of rebuilding, 3 areas: centre back, defensive midfielder, possibly, and right-sided attacker for those areas. Let's start with the centre back position. You're going to have Konate, and Konate. So when it comes to Virgil van Dijk, is he probably the most important person to keep around and sign another deal, and probably his final deal? Because do you think Konate's ready to kind of be that A side?
No, I think when you're talking about a player of Van Dijk's quality, he is irreplaceable. He's been the best centre back in the Premier League in the last 5 years. He's completely irreplaceable. I'd be very surprised to see him leave. I think he'll almost certainly extend his contract. I think Kothari is a very good lieutenant to him. I think Joe Gomez this season has actually been a lot better than I was expecting. And I think the Liverpool side itself, I don't think it needs that much. Of course, there was a bit of a refresh with the entire midfield pretty much last season by getting in Szoboszlai, McAllister and Endo, although he was sort of the third choice player. So they've had a bit of a rebuild of the midfield. And the team that they've still got, Darwin, Diaz, Szoboszlai, McAllister, Robertson, Trent will definitely not leave, Alisson. That's an incredible spine of a team. So I don't think that the rebuild is massive. Okay. And if I'm being honest, with the young players that are coming through, you never really know, because young players, particularly when they're first in the first team, they might have a purple patch, and you might not know.
That adrenaline.
That adrenaline just keeps them going. But I think like Conor Bradley looks amazing. Dan's looks pretty good. So I think they've got a fantastic spine, and they've got these youngsters coming up. I don't think they need anyone, and I really don't think a centre back is the position where they need to cover,
really?
unless Van Dijk does go.
Well, I guess so. We'll come back to Van Dijk, but Matip will obviously go, right?
Yep.
So, there's a couple of options here. It's been rumoured De Ligt, in terms of obviously a big name. That would be a good move for them. Levi Cole, I'm a huge fan of, and I think he's going to be one of those guys. I just think his ceiling is so high, and he's played a lot of games, which I like. I wouldn't mind either of those getting them into the club, regardless of Van Dijk leaving or not, because you're going to need an extra. That's been a problem this year, isn't it, with centre backs? Does Van Dijk absolutely have to stay?
Yeah, I sort of disagree slightly with what Kim's saying. I think these are the three most important players or positions in the modern game: your defensive midfielder, your centre back, and your right winger. And certainly in Klopp's time at Liverpool, they've been the most important positions. I think Liverpool have to get Van Dijk nailed down, because he's not only is he the leader in the dressing room. You've seen in recent weeks when Liverpool have been struggling, he's the guy. And when we talk about like cheat codes, we often talk about that Liverpool can still play a high line with any other combination of three defenders with him, because he's there. So yeah, I like De Ligt, I like Levi Cole.
You probably need the next. You need the next guy. You feel like Levi Cole is that guy?
I think Hincapié actually is the guy at Bayer Leverkusen. If Xabi Alonso does come, he's a natural left-sided centre back. I think that's maybe the one area where like Van Dijk excels so much as a right-footed left-sided centre back, but a natural left-sided centre back makes more sense. So he might be the guy
with a and also those players that can become be a bit of a left back for you as well. Levi Cole can do that as well. In midfield, I think Endo's done well, hasn't he? I guess he's the wrong side of 30, so I think there's an overall feeling, because they didn't get Caicedo or Lavia, that might be a road to go down. So a couple of people that they might look at, someone like João Gomez. That's a big jump for him to go into, but he has really been exciting this year. And your boy Zubimendi.
They're talking about him at last.
You said months ago you wanted him in. Do you still want to strengthen in that area? You have a lot of midfielders, maybe not the total balance that you want. Is that sort of third on the list for you, I think?
Yeah, I'd say so, especially because, as you said, Endo's still relatively young, despite obviously that on the grand scheme of things he'll be around for another couple of years. And if you have to find a centre back and a right-sided attacker, then you probably don't desperately need a six, unless Zubimendi becomes available. Then please go and sign Nubaid.
Okay. The right-sided attacker, and I'm going to ask you a question, Nubaid. I think you might have guessed this one. If you can only get one to sign a contract, Van Dijk or Salah, I want you to answer that in a second. But that right-sided attacker, if Salah was to depart, a couple of options. Leroy Sané, there's been a lot of rumours about that one. Michael Olise has been linked with a lot of teams as well. How do you feel about those two, and how do you feel about Mohamed Salah as a player that we spoke about Van Dijk and how important he might be? Is Salah in that same bracket in terms of just getting to sign?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, both of those players, what they've done for the club and their quality, it literally cannot be replaced. You can't replace Salah and you can't replace Van Dijk. I would say Van Dijk is the more important one now to keep hold of, and I'd say just more in terms of the age of Mohamed Salah and the fact that he doesn't seem. There was a period a couple of years ago where it seemed like maybe he wanted out of the club, and then he got that big bumper contract, and I think Van Dijk has never really erred from wanting to stay at Liverpool. I think with Salah as well, there are some very, very good right wingers coming up. I mean, you mentioned Leroy Sané there. That would absolutely kill me. but he is of a similar profile without maybe the final finishing product, which I assume a manager can hopefully coach him into. I think Michael Elise, I know it's a huge step up. It's a massive step up, but he has, for me, the profile to be one of those players. And the thing is, what Salah does, he's a right winger, but he's also kind of a striker, and he switches between those, and you're not going to get a player like that. There aren't many players like that. I know we discussed Jared Bowen off air, he's got the profile for it, but it's a completely different level in my opinion. So you're probably not going to get someone like that. So the style of play will have to change.
That's interesting.
But I think Salah leaving and a style of play implemented, I don't think it would leave as much of a hole as a Van Dijk leaving.
Is a good point. Like, who's another, like, even just profile wise, another Salah. There's on the right hand side. There's not a huge amount of guys who get anywhere near the output that he puts out. So Elise would be different. Sane would be different. I think you lose a few goals, but maybe you get
a few goals.
Fair amount.
One or two. You get a different kind of creativity from Sane. Let me ask you that question then, babe. Come on. Van Dijk, Salah. You can only retain one. Who would you want to retain?
The more I think about it, the more I think you also just spoke to the point that I was thinking. There isn't another Salah. There isn't a wide forward who's going to score you that many goals. I think, but there also isn't another Van Dijk. But there's a lot of centre backs. There's a lot of very good centre backs out there. I think you'll never be able to replace the level of Van Dijk, but you could probably replace that area,
the general defensive quality. And you don't need that end product of goals.
Exactly. Like Van Dijk's position is less quantifiable, whereas Salah's position, if the guy isn't scoring 30 goals and getting 10 assists, then he's never going to be Mo Salah. I'm going to say Mo Salah.
He's gone for Mo Salah. Wow. Okay. I'm going to sit on the fence and not answer and just say, you guys let us know in the comments down below. Who would you go for?